land where Princess Parade is was always a buffer zone between the sea and the land. It was in effect the old Saxon beach. The beach was a lot longer and rolled all the way up to the rising ground at Seabrook. Essentially, it was part of the sea originally, then the beach, then the Royal Military Canal created the causeway, and then it became populated, and it was more or less the way it is today.
In the 1930s, Hythe Town Council had big plans for the Princess Parade, and they took out a loan to buy it. One of the conditions of the loan was that the area was kept as a public recreation area. But in the intervening years, the war started, and in 1946 it became a landfill site, and this carried on until 1974. It was an open landfill site, so there wasn't an awful lot of control about what went into it. There are local people that think that there was some highly dangerous contaminants going into that, even asbestos, because there wasn't very much known about the dangers of asbestos at that time. In 1968, the loan was paid off, and the land was then transferred to Hythe, who have been trying to develop it more or less ever since.
It's an open space that is currently surrounded by urban development. And, you know, going back to the last time that planning permission was overturned by the planning inspector, she said that it had the finest vistas in the district. And the vista, the view that she was talking about, wasn't the view out to sea. It was the view if you stand at the tram stop and then do the 180 from the Roughs over in the west all the way around the natural bowl up to the rising ground at Shorncliffe. It is generally considered one of the finest views on the south coast. And with the amount of development that there is scheduled for Shetway or Folkestone and Hythe, it is essential in my view that we keep some open spaces along our coastline, and this is perfect because of its relationship between the canal and the sea.
Well, first of all, we believe that was an absolutely perverse judgment, even went against the government policy at the time, and it's certainly what has changed is government policy. Government policy is for houses, houses and houses, plus the fact we've got the rapid deterioration of the existing pool.
The 17 acres of open space, or 22 acres of open space. That may sound like a very big area, but you know, once you put a leisure centre with a swimming pool in there and car parking for 75 cars and 150 houses and flats, a boutique hotel, etc., you quickly use up all of that space. And the space that remains that, I have to say that the council rather laughingly refer to as open space is really a postage stamp in comparison with what we've got. And the important thing to understand is that it's not the open space itself per se, it is the vistas that the open space allows. And once we put buildings in front of these vistas, then we lose them forever. Everyone will just drive past, and they'll just think it's another housing estate put up by a council, and we will lose so much of our heritage around the scheduled ancient monument.
We'll have a brand new pool and leisure area. On top of that, we'll get some much needed housing, including affordable housing. We will create a wonderful space because we're going to promenade between the leisure centre and the sea and divert the road round the back, and that will make a wonderful, wonderful area. On top of that, we'll have a high quality green space down at the western end, which there isn't there now.
There's no reason why they couldn't develop a new swimming pool on the site that they've already got. It would mean that the present swimming pool would be out of action, but it's in great need of some TLC, and I think people would be willing to not have that facility for 6 months or whatever, and have a brand new swimming pool in a centrally located area that it is now.
The other thing about this, when we finished it, we won't have a revenue cost for having swimming in Hythe. We will in fact get an income. We will be providing the building. You have to understand the difference between capital and revenue here. But at the moment we pay over $200,000 a year to keep the pool at Hythe open. We will probably get around about 50 to 60,000 a year profit share going forward. That's a difference of £250,000 a year. Over 10 years, that's £2.5 million, isn't it?
There have been a number of other alternative financial viability assessments made, all of which show, staggering losses on development. Lay people feel that property developers never lose. Well, the fact of the matter is that generally most of them do lose money, and it's only a very few, Taylor Wimpey, Berkeley Homes, Redrow, large volume house builders who consistently make money, and any of those kind of developers wouldn't touch this site with a barge pole, because it is so complex, and every element of complexity adds cost. Once your costs outweigh your profit, you're in loss, and this site makes a thumping loss. It's been estimated around £20 million, could be more. So as the development is proposed for 150 homes, the leisure centre, the boutique hotel, the open space, etc., makes about a £20 million loss. There are other factors that could come into play. The council have got a lot of assets which they could direct towards this, but does it represent value for money for local people? Well, the answer to that is a resounding no.
Shatway, in their objectively assessed needs for housing, they have a target. Now they have Otterpool Park, which is a town of 10,000 houses. That's going ahead, that's been approved. I don't see why they need 150 houses on Prince's Parade to meet their target. But I think it's a balance, isn't it? If you've already got something agreed, as it was with Martello Lakes, Nichols Quarry, you've also got to think about the well-being of people, both physically and mentally, which is all part of having open spaces. We're all living really stressful, hectic lives, and people need to get out into the countryside and into open areas for their own well-being, rather than mental as physical, as I say. So it's a balance. All the time it's a balance. There is need for housing, but there is need for affordable housing, primarily first-time buyers. But I fear that most of these developments coming along are not for first-time buyers, and the affordable housing will be a very small percentage, if at all. Developers don't like affordable houses because they can't make a lot of money.
No, the answer is we need all the houses we can get. And I might say that the government isn't stopping where it's gone. Already we're getting a lot of noise that they're going to want even more houses.
Shepway District Council have a full pipeline of housing sites. In fact, with Otterpool and with the Harbour Arm, they've got an oversupply, a massive oversupply of housing sites available to meet housing need. People often say, well, we need houses, we need housing sites, and I absolutely agree with that. But in this particular part of Kent, we've got a massive supply of potential pipeline sites. So housing need as an argument really disappears. I completely agree that the council has abused the land by dumping waste in it in the past, and any remediation to that is a good thing. But you can remediate it without building a housing estate on it.
One of the major difficulties is the risk of flooding. This area is designated in Chatway's own strategic flood risk assessment as Zone 3, which is the highest risk that you can have. It's not defended from the sea, and with climate change and sea levels rising, it's got to be one of the main reasons for not developing on that particular site.
That's all had to be taken into account. And indeed, everybody knows we've done the test borings and found for sure there is contamination that has to be treated. That, by the way, gives us an immediate problem, because we now have to treat that contamination, whether we build or not.
The council, as the developer and the landowner, are instructing these reports to deliver a certain message. However, what has frustrated the council over a number of years is that professionals can't lie. They may be able to present the facts in a certain way, shall we say, but effectively they can't lie. So, for example, in the earliest iterations of this development process, the council was saying that the piling needs to go down 5 metres. But now that we've had further investigations, more detailed understanding by the engineers, it now has to go down 15 metres. And that's only a guess. They really don't know. The only time you'll know how deep your piles are is once you start putting them in. This is a complex site. So not only do they have to pile down through the debris and the contaminants that the council put there, but they also have to pile down through the old beach, through the gravel, down to the wheeled clay below. Now, the problem that they have when they do this is that the pile offers an opportunity for the contaminants to come up, particularly when the tide is high and the groundwater levels are high, or, for example, following very heavy rain, where the ground will be very, very wet and the contaminants will become fluid. So it is, in engineering terms, very, very, very complex, because you've got the issues of extraordinarily poor ground, because effectively you're trying to build on 8 metres of rubbish, and the risk of contaminants coming to the surface and causing a problem. They can't get rid of the contamination. All they can do is encapsulate it, i.e. cover it. These are just engineering problems on engineering problems on engineering problems, and a full comprehensive solution has not really been put forward. This isn't really any fault of the council, or it isn't any fault of the professionals involved. This is just such a complex site that anyone who tells you that there is a solution to all of these problems is really talking rubbish.
Within society, there are groups of people that agree and there are groups of people that disagree. As a planning authority, when the planning committee sits, which, by the way, none of the executive of this council, i.e. any of the cabinet members, will be sitting on, because we we are the promoters of this scheme, I am in particular, they will take into consideration all the evidence on the night that is given, including all of the protests. And to say we don't listen isn't true. Sometimes the result that the protesters get isn't what they wanted. But that doesn't mean to say that their protests weren't taken into consideration. We will address them in the planning documents as best we can. We believe that we will never satisfy historic England. However, we do believe that we will be able to mollify their opinion, or make it less harmful for them.
Well, it's valued as a heritage site, but also it's valued as a nature reserve. I mean, the scheduled monument, which is the Royal Military Canal, is protected by various policies. And more recently, the setting of any heritage site or a heritage asset is protected in national planning policy. You've got a lot of wildlife on the land, the best in the area. You've got slowworms, common toads, grass snakes, that sort of species, like terrestrial as well as aquatic habitats. A lot of birds, mute swans, moorhens, kingfishers, that sort of thing. You've got two pieces of nature, if you like. If you get rid of one, which you would by having that amount of development on that land, you degrade either one, and the biodiversity is also degraded. So it's a very important wildlife area in this part of Kent. CPRE are very concerned about the tranquility of the area, the light pollution, because you've got a very large building at the leisure centre, plus 150 houses, and with houses come people, and with people come domestic predators like dogs and cats, which will threaten the wildlife, not only of what they're supposedly saying will be open spaces, but also along the canal.
No, I just think it is such a wonderful scheme. Every generation, and I say this time and time again, should put some infrastructure in for the next generation, because if we just let everything break down, we'll end up with a broken society.
People may say, yeah, but Jim, you know, there's a huge demand for beachfront property. And I don't deny that. There is definitely a huge demand for beachfront property. But effectively, if we develop every open space that we have, just simply on the basis of commercial terms, i.e. that there is a demand and some will come along and pay a premium, then, really we're not serving the local community at all.
Let's face it, Prince's Trade is a blasted heath. It's contaminated. It's the biggest dog toilet in South East England. I can only see great benefit coming from this, and an addition to everybody's lives to make a very good place.
It is not only our immediate local community in Seabrook who lack open space and need open space, but this site is of national importance. It's a historic site, and people from across the globe really deserve to be able to come to this site, see the canal in something of its original setting, and take in the vistas across up to the Shorncliffe Barracks, down to the redoubt at Seabrook, and understand why we built the canal in the first place.
My dad said to me a long time ago, we don't own this planet. We're only guardians of the planet for the time that we are here, and we should do all we can to protect what's here, not try and just overwhelm it and destroy it, because once you've concreted over somewhere, there's no going back.